promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Bamako, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. This is NewsLink. Let's begin with our top stories. The Guinean government suspends academic and commercial activities as a deadly gas explosion rocks the nation's oil reservoir in Conakry.
And according to the Ministry of the Civil Protection, other countries like Senegal and Mali is about to arrive for support.
Nigeria's government reveals 90,000 suspected terrorists surrender in northeast region since 2019. Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo rejects lame dog tag placed on him by Speaker of Parliament, arguing he is still firmly in charge. And World marks 2023 International Migrants Day with a call for protection of migrants and host communities impacted by global warming.
We have to be stronger in connecting climate adaptation and human mobility, more climate action in areas affected by displacement, conflict, and climate change, and more adaptation is key to offer people choice, the choice to remain in their communities of origin if they wish.
Many thanks for staying with us. Details of this and more coming up shortly.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with NewsLink.
A warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana, and Liberia. We begin this edition of NewsLink in Guinea, where a deadly explosion at an oil terminal in the nation's capital, Conakry, on Monday killed at least 8 people. The police officer told the media that several dozen others were injured while the fire is being contained. The cause of the blast is still being investigated, says Imo Edet, who brings more details in this report.
8 people were reportedly killed and more than 80 others injured from the deadly explosion. The oil terminal situated in the Kaloum administrative district in downtown Conakry caused partial destruction to homes and administrative buildings, forcing hundreds to abandon their residence. The eyewitness account varies from one source to another. According to some witnesses, a huge fire was sighted from miles away as firefighters rushed to the area, while several tanker trucks left the depot. The government, in a statement, assured that an investigation has been launched to establish the cause of the explosion and determine who might be responsible. The government furthermore expressed deep concern about the event, the scale and consequences of which could have a direct impact on the population. Currently, the extent of the damage to the terminal is unclear. People in the capital city have been urged to stay home and schools closed for the whole Monday. Guinea, which is not an oil producer, imports refined products that are mostly stored in a Kaloum terminal and distributed via trucks across the country.
Imo added with that report. Do stay with us as a guest and eyewitness joins us in the second half of the news with details on that explosion. Meanwhile, we head to Burkina Faso, where a cabinet reshuffle has taken place following a decree by interim President Captain Ibrahim Traoré announced on national broadcast on Sunday. Key among the changes is the naming of Yakuba Zabri Guba, Mine and Energy Minister, who replaces Jean-Pierre Boissy. The shake-up comes 2 months after the fragile state revised its mining code to enable it to take more in royalties in boom times after a drop in gold production. Tawfiq Abdel Nasser has won this report.
According to the announcement, Olivier Rwamba is no longer head of diplomacy for Burkina Faso. She has been replaced by Karamako Jean-Marie Traoré, who was previously the Minister of Delegate for Cooperation and Burkinabés in Diaspora. The former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Cooperation and Burkinabés Abroad had held this portfolio since the advent of the Patriotic Movement for Safeguard and Restoration, led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandango Damiba. Karamako Jean-Marie Traoré has been replaced by Stella Cabri. Another change in the Burkinabe executive is that of Jacques Sothene Dingara, previously Secretary General of the Government and of the Council of Ministers. He is now in charge of the Ministry of National Education, Literacy and the Promotion of National Languages, replacing Joseph André Ouedraogo. Jean-Emmanuel Ouedraogo is now Minister of State. He also retains the Ministry of Communication, Culture, Arts and Tourism, continuing as the government spokesperson.
Tawfiq Abdel Nasser filed that report. Still in the Sahel, a South African nurse, Gerco van de Venter, who was abducted in Libya, has been released in Mali after enduring more than 6 years of captivity. Abducted by jihadists in the North African country in November 2017 and subsequently transferred to Mali by his captors, he was freed last Friday, as reported by Malian security sources. Currently undergoing treatment in Algiers, the 48-year-old hostage was released at the border between Mali and Algeria. This information was corroborated by a foreign humanitarian source and aligns with details provided on December 17 by the South African organization Gift of the Givers, which facilitated the release. Gerko van der Vanten, who worked for a security company, was originally kidnapped while traveling to a power plant construction site in Libya, estimated 1,000 kilometers from Tripoli, the capital. Following his release, he is under observation in a hospital in Algiers with plans for further medical attention before his eventual return to South Africa, although the exact date remains unspecified. Away from the Sahel to Nigeria, where the National Counterterrorism Center in the capital has revealed that over 90,000 suspected terrorists, including women and children, have surrendered to the disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration (DDR) process in the northeast region of Nigeria since its inception in 2019. The northeast, which consists of Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, and Bauchi State, is where the war on insurgency has been ongoing in the last 2 decades. The national coordinator of the National Center disclosed while delivering a keynote address over the weekend at the annual general meeting of the Abuja branch of ASIS International. WADR's Usman Umar reports.
The armed forces and security agencies of Nigeria, according to Rear Admiral Musa, have made huge strides in decreasing terrorist activities. Compared to previous years, he says, there have been fewer attacks in 2021, 2022 and 2023, resulting in a drop of over 92% in deaths attributed to terrorist attacks.
So the ongoing combined effort have continued to yield significant results. Currently, over 90,000 suspected terrorists, including women and children, have surrendered to a demobilization team in Northeast. The surrendered terrorists are usually handed over to civil organizations after undergoing disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration process at established camps.
Expanding on this, the national coordinator highlights Nigeria's strategy in countering violent extremism, emphasizing the focus on non-kinetic measures, recognizing that socio-economic disparities contribute to driving violent extremism. Nigeria prioritizes addressing these root causes.
One of the various main ways to actually discourage people from committing offense is law, good law, and implementation of law. So the Nigerian government have recently reviewed the Terrorism Prevention Act. Now, Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022, which had again upgraded some of the sanctions, some of the punishments, some of the jail terms of terrorists who are found guilty.
The implementation of the National Counter-Terrorism Strategy and the National Cybersecurity Policy stands amongst the government's measures to prevent and combat terrorism. However, despite these efforts, actual terrorism and imminent threats persist in various regions of the country. The Northeast faces ongoing terrorism, while the North Central and Northwestern regions grapple with armed attacks and kidnapping for ransom. Additionally, pockets of attacks by gunmen continue to occur in the southwest and southeastern parts of Nigeria. For NEWSLINK on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. NEWSLINK continues.
Remember, we stream live on wadr.org. Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has rejected the lame dog tag placed on him by Speaker of Parliament Alban Bangbin. The Speaker, after the election of Vice President Dr. Mahamadou Bawumia as flag bearer for the governing NPP, asserted the President has become a lame dog. The President argues that he is fully in charge of the affairs. WADR's Accra correspondent Nan Titi reports.
At a ceremony over the weekend to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the coronation of Mohammed Sani Fall as Paramount Chief of Nima, Nifuta charged President Akufo-Addo to do something drastic to shed off the lame duck tag slapped on him, since his vice president and appointees will be campaigning rather than concentrating on their respective responsibilities.
Mr. President, I have heard the Speaker of Parliament call you lame duck. Mr. President, I totally disagree with him, and I do not think you will accept that tag. A year in politics is a long time. I know you are capable of doing even more than we can imagine. Mr. President, I wish to remind you that your vice president will be out there campaigning to succeed you, and so will be many of your ministers and other appointees. In order to successfully continue to steer the affairs of this country under the circumstances, you may need to take some immediate and radical actions that can enhance your legacy and perhaps even enhance the chances of those you would wish to succeed you. I want you to remove the phrase lame duck from the dictionary of politics.
Responding to the charge of the NEMA chief, President Akufo-Addo asserted he's still in charge and will be till January 7, 2025, and thus wondered why the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Kingsford Suman Bagbin, would describe him in those terms.
Speaker Bagbin says I'm a lame duck. Well, that's his language. I am still the President of the Republic, and I will continue to be so. I have no doubt that the power to make decisions and to carry out policies is still firmly in my hands, and I'm not going to let it go.
He lauded NIFUTA for holding the community together as a unit, charging Ghanaians once again to reject politicians with divisive tendencies who preach disunity.
We mustn't listen to anybody who comes to talk the language of division or exclusion in our country. We don't want that.
For WADR, Nadidi Teti, Accra.
Meanwhile, the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, has donated a large consignment of life-saving medical equipment to Liberia. This medical contribution aims to bolster the government's initiatives in strengthening the healthcare sector and combating the maternal mortality rate in the country. From Monrovia, WADR's Darlington Pauper reports.
Maternal mortality remains a significant concern in Liberia, with the country consistently ranking among those with the highest maternal mortality ratios, recorded 1,072 maternal deaths for every 100,000 births in various health surveys. During the handing over of the vital medical supplies, USAID Mission Director in Liberia, James Wright, emphasized the necessity for increased investment to reduce the alarming ratio.
We have seen a reduction in maternal mortality ratio in 3 of the focus counties. Margibi has achieved a 70% reduction. Nimba and Bong have achieved 20% and 25% reductions. While these results are promising, there is much more work to do to achieve the national goal of reducing the maternal mortality rate by 50%. This requires significant investments in the national health strategy to reduce maternal and newborn death in Liberia. The U.S. government continues to be committed to helping Liberia to provide access to quality health care for all Liberians.
Meanwhile, Liberia's Chief Medical Officer Dr. Francis Kitty highlighted the collaborative efforts with partners that have contributed to reducing the ratios over the years.
Liberia has had a major situation when it comes to maternal mortality. Through the help of our partners, government and everyone, we are able to reduce maternal mortality from 1,042, that is per 100,000, to 742. But it is still very high globally, and so we are still working very hard.
The healthcare workers also expressed gratitude to USAID for the donation, pledging to focus on reducing the travel times for pregnant women.
Today we see progress being made on a milestone. We thought on reducing travel time to upgrade some clinics to comprehensive. So we were able to identify Campley Health Center. So STAPE was able to reinforce and upgrade instruments that were lacking. We have a setup at the Jackson F2 Hospital, also at the GW Halley Hospital in San College. And these instruments are very expensive. You see quality in them. And I can tell you, we will work with the different hospitals to ensure that we maintain the gain.
For now, the donors are optimistic that these contributions will be utilized appropriately to effectively combat maternal mortality rates in Liberia. For NEWSLINK on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Pauper in Monrovia.
You are listening to NewsLink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. The Guinean government suspends academic and commercial activities as a deadly gas explosion rocks the nation's oil reservoir in Conakry. Nigeria's government reveals 90,000 suspected terrorist surrender in northeast region since 2019. Ghana's president Nana Akufo-Addo rejects lame dog tag placed on him by Speaker of Parliament, arguing he's still firmly in charge. Still ahead in the news, world marks 2023 International Migrants Day with a call for the protection of migrants and host communities impacted by global warming. We also have the press review, guest interview, and a sports update. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Many thanks for staying with us. Today's International Migrants Day. The 2023 event-themed Act Today emphasizes the urgency required to address the complex issues surrounding migration and calls for proactive measures to harness the positive potential of mobility while mitigating the challenges associated with it. Regarding this charge, the UN Migration Agency, IOM, believes that well-managed migration is the foundation for sustainable development and prosperity for all. This will include mitigating the impact of climate change on migrants, promoting equal and inclusive partnerships with migrants, women, persons with disabilities, and communities, says Ugochi Daniels, the organization's Deputy Director General of Operations. She emphasizes that the role of youth is now more critical than ever to develop activities that help migrants and displaced people in their host communities on the front line of the climate crisis.
We could have up to 3 billion people exposed to extreme heat waves by 2090 under a high warming scenario. And we know that right now half of the world lives in highly vulnerable locations. But we can all do far more. We have to be stronger in connecting climate adaptation and human mobility, more climate action in areas affected by displacement, conflict, and climate change will mean fewer humanitarian emergencies in the future, and more adaptation is key to offer people choice, the choice to remain in their communities of origin if they wish. So, talking about choices, we need to look at how to help people move through regular and safe migration pathways, and regional leaders are showing how this can be done. East African countries agreed to the Kampala Declaration, and Pacific countries have agreed to the Pacific Regional Framework on Climate Mobility. These agreements pave the way to facilitate migration for those most affected by the climate crisis. In a world where we are witnessing unending crises, IOM firmly believes that well-managed migration is a foundation for sustainable development and prosperity for all, and we're here to help member states achieve this objective.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
It's a Monday, and our press review takes us to Nigeria, where Usman Umar is standing by with screaming and banner headlines from the national dailies.
Hello and welcome to the press review segment. Today we have two major papers for review: Nigerian Pilot and People's Daily. Nigerian Pilot today is leading with this very screaming headline: surpass 18.3 trillion naira. This is Senate talking to ministries, departments and agencies that are generating revenue for the federal government. This, of course, is a response to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's last month presentation of the national budget. Tinubu had presented to the joint session of the National Assembly figure of 27.50 trillion naira. Being fully commercialized economy now, NNPC Limited is expected to generate more. Of course, above this screaming headline, you have SERAP drags INEC to court for failing to prosecute electoral offenders. Socioeconomic Rights and Advocacy Project drags the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to court for failing to prosecute electoral offenders. Now, next story: why Igbos didn't vote for Bola Tinubu in the last election. This is coming from the Socio-Cultural Organization of the Igbos, otherwise known as Ohaneze Ndi Igbo. Right there, they are explaining why they chose not to vote for Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who won the presidential election in the last February election. But of course, let's go over to other stories that made the front cover of the Nigerian Pilot. Governor Ubasani says era of religious discrimination in Kaduna is over. Ubasani is the governor of Kaduna State, making a promise there. Federal government should facilitate use of Orashi Oguta Port to decongest Lagos. This is coming from stakeholders. Now, appeal court decides Fintiri Binani's fate on Monday. Fintiri is the governor of Adamawa State under the platform of the People's Democratic Party. He has been challenged by Binani, Aishatu Binani, of the APC. And, of course, the appeal court deciding the matter is to give verdict on Monday. Then there are other stories trending here. Now, let's quickly move over to the People's Daily. The People's Daily today is leading with Economic and Financial Crimes Commission boss seeks legislation against unexplained wealth. This matter has been, on and on. Unexplained wealth, meaning that the commission should be able to, that's what the boss is seeking now, that the commission should be able to raise questions regarding individuals that are seen, with wealth that can't be explained. The commission should be able to have the powers to question them, to come forward, to explain the sources of their wealth. And this is the much we have for you on the press review segment. I hand you over now back to the studios.
Many thanks, Usman Umar.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Joining us in the guest interview segment is Amadou Bello, a Guinean and resident of Conakry, who says the government has suspended academic and commercial activities due to the explosion of an oil terminal. The number of casualties remains unverified, but sources say 8 people were killed, several dozens injured, and hundreds more evacuated from the scene of the blast in downtown Conakry. Amadou, good to have you join WEDR. Kindly bring us to speed with the major development.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Actually, this is one of the biggest catastrophes that Guinea has faced so far. It happens around 11 p.m. yesterday night. And for the moment, we have received a kind of notice from the government that a limited access has been placed around the Kaloum so that there will be no entrance to avoid more problems coming up. At the moment I'm speaking to you, according to information at my possession, the civil protection is working, the firefighters are working hard to concentrate all the effort to stop the fire, but still the situation is complicated. And according to the Ministry of the Civil Protection, other countries like Senegal and Mali is about to arrive for support. For the time being, we cannot confirm officially if there is a death or anything like this, and the number of people, the injuries and death, we cannot confirm that. All we know from the images we've seen from private radio and the public media is that a lot of property damages in Kaloum, and we have heard that some houses windows went explosions, and this is all we know. And all the petrol stations has been officially asked to close for further notice. So the Guinean population is waiting, sitting. They ask everybody to stay at home for today, and they are putting into place a crisis committee to evaluate the situation. And in the coming hours, they will be officially communicating on the tragedy that we're facing actually in Guinea.
Very well. Amadou, like you rightly said, you said this is one of the deadliest disasters to hit Guinea in recent times. And what are some of the economic impacts you fear this will cause?
Actually, it's really early to speak about it, but what I can tell you is for the moment, 1 liter of a fuel, 1 liter we are buying in the, as we say in Guinea, in the black market, we're buying it around 30 to 40 Guinean francs. So you see already the panic in the city, but the government is asking people to be more patient, and then the coming hours they will be communicating on the new directive. As you know, that it will be, from my perspective, there will be some challenges in the coming days, because even if we receive a fuel and we don't know where to deport them, and we don't have tank areas, actually sufficient tank areas in the country. So this is going to be a real big challenge. The reason why the government has putting into place the crisis office in order to evaluate the situation, to bring from time to time positive actions.
Amadou Bello, a Guinean and resident of Conakry, speaking to us about deadly gas explosion that caused a panic Monday morning. It's now time for sports update. Let's join Sankule Janko.
Hello, very warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Ghana international Mohamed Kudus scored a brace to inspire West Ham to a 3-0 victory against Wolverhampton in the Premier League on Sunday at the London Stadium. The Hammers returned to winning ways and bounced back from their humiliating 5-0 thrashing by Fulham at Craven Cottage last week. The Black Stars winger Kudus scored from the edge of the box before adding his second less than 10 minutes later as the Ghanaian forward continued his goal-scoring form for the Londoners. Jared Bowen scored West Ham's start of the day to secure the points for the Hammers after a difficult week. Meanwhile, Nigeria international striker Victor Boniface was on the score sheet and provided an assist for Bayern Leverkusen in their 3-0 win against Eintracht Frankfurt in the German Bundesliga. The Super Eagles forward once again put up a brilliant performance for the German Giants. Boniface put Leverkusen ahead 14 minutes into the match as he called the ball into the back of the net after receiving the ball from the midfield. The Super Eagles forward Boniface turned the provider as he assisted Jeremy Frimpong to score Leverkusen's second 6 minutes after the break. Xavi Alonso's men wrap up the match in the 57th minute after Florian Wirtz added the third goal for the day. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of NewsLink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukidi and Maudou Diouf for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is WADR's health flagship program, Well Body, with Ogebe Rika, and expect Info Chez Vous at the top of the hour of 1 p.m. from the French service. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0, and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County. For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.
Tis the season to be jolly. WADR is here to sprinkle some musical magic on your festive celebrations.